If you are a parent listening to me right now, give me your full attention. This isn't cheap advice. It is a warning from a 79-year-old man who had to lose himself before he learned how to truly live. I spent 40 years ruining my body in a fabricating plant to provide for my 3 kids. Back then, I thought emptying yourself out until there was nothing left was the definition of love. But 3 months ago, I had a stroke. I sat in a Chicago hospital room for 5 days, staring at an empty vinyl chair next to my bed. My 2 sons and my daughter all live within an hour's drive. Not one of them sat in that chair. They texted, but nobody came. In that quiet room, a brutal truth washed over me. I wasn't their father anymore. I was just their safety net, a bottomless resource they took for granted because I never set a single boundary. My name is Frank Donovan. If you don't want to end up staring at an empty chair wondering why nobody came, listen closely. These are the 5 things you must never allow your adult children to do to you. The first thing that slips away from you is your dignity, and it rarely disappears during a shouting match. It slips away quietly across your own dinner table, disguised as an ordinary conversation. My oldest son, Michael, is 51. A year ago, he came over to the house stressed out over a contract dispute at work. As I listened, I realized I had fought almost the same battle decades earlier when my own contracting business was on the brink of collapse. I poured him a fresh cup of coffee and started sharing what I'd learned. How sometimes the real solution isn't force, but knowing how to find common ground. Before I could finish, Michael glanced at his watch, smiled, and said, "Dad, that's just not how the modern world works anymore. Business is different now. Thanks anyway." He wasn't trying to be cruel, but those few words hit harder than he ever knew. In a matter of seconds, 79 years of hard-earned experience felt as though they had been tossed aside like something outdated and worthless. That's how dignity disappears. When your children treat your wisdom like yesterday's news, you eventually stop offering it. You swallow your stories. You make yourself smaller so you won't inconvenience anyone. My friend Walt, an 82-year-old retired machinist, told me, "Artie, it's easier to be invisible than to be dismissed." The moment he said that, I realized I had started doing the very same thing. So the next day, I called Michael. I didn't raise my voice. I simply said, "Michael, I may not understand every modern trend, but I understand people, sacrifice, and life. When you cut me off, you aren't rejecting my advice. You are telling me my life no longer has value. I am your father, and if you want my company, you will respect my voice." He was silent. Sometimes people don't recognize their disrespect until someone has the courage to name it. Draw that line, because if you let them erase your voice, they will slowly erase your dignity. The second thing that will destroy you is letting your adult children treat your life savings like an endless credit card. When my wife passed away 8 years ago, she left me with a modest nest egg. It wasn't a fortune. It was 30 years of sacrifice, careful budgeting, and hard work. That money wasn't meant to make me rich. It was meant to keep me independent for the rest of my life. Then my youngest daughter, Sarah, went through a difficult divorce. She called in tears, needing $5,000 for a lawyer. I wrote the check. A few months later, my son Terrence couldn't make his mortgage payment. I wrote another check. Then Sarah's SUV broke down. Then Terrence had a business idea he swore couldn't fail. Every time, they promised to pay me back. Every time, I believed them. I told myself, they're my children. What else is this money for? But that's how it happens. Not all at once, little by little. Your children begin to see you as someone who will always figure it out. They don't mean to hurt you. They simply assume Dad will keep sacrificing because he always has. Night after night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, watching my savings disappear and wondering what would happen if my health failed or I needed long-term care. For the first time in my life, I was afraid of growing old. Then, I looked at my neighbor Harold. He had given his entire retirement pension to save his son's failing restaurant. The business collapsed anyway. Now Harold rents out part of his home just to cover his bills. One winter afternoon, he sat on my porch with tears in his eyes and said, "Artie, I wanted to be their hero. Now I'm broke, and they're too ashamed to even call." That was the moment I woke up. I invited my children over, placed my bank statement on the table, and said, "I love every one of you, but the bank of Dad is permanently closed. This money isn't extra. It is my future. I'll help you make a plan. I'll help you solve problems, but I will never write another check." The room fell silent. Terrence looked angry. Sarah looked hurt. It was one of the hardest conversations I'd ever had. But your savings aren't a sign of greed. They are your freedom. If you give away the security you spent a lifetime building, don't expect anyone to hand it back when you need it most. The third thing you must never allow your adult children to do is use guilt to steal your time, your health, and your peace. They don't have to yell or argue. Sometimes all it takes is a heavy sigh, a tired voice, and the words, "I just don't know what I'd do without you." Before you realize it, you've canceled your own plans to solve problems that aren't yours anymore. Last summer, I had a fishing trip planned with 3 old friends from my Veterans Lodge. We'd been looking forward to it for months. It was going to be a quiet weekend by Lake Michigan, the first real break I'd given myself in a long time. The morning I was loading my truck, my daughter Sarah called in tears. Her ex-husband hadn't picked up the kids. She was overwhelmed, and she begged me to watch my grandchildren for the weekend. Without thinking, I unpacked my gear, canceled on my friends, and drove straight to her house. For the next 2 days, I chased toddlers, lifted toys, and pushed my 79-year-old body far beyond its limits while Sarah stayed in her room trying to recover. When I pulled into my driveway Sunday night, I shut off the engine and sat there in the dark. Then I cried, not because I don't love my grandchildren. I love them more than words can say. I cried because I realized I had sacrificed my own peace once again for a burden that wasn't mine to carry. Somewhere along the way, I had taught my daughter that my time didn't matter because I always gave it away. The next time Sarah called with that familiar, exhausted voice, I stopped her gently. I said, "Sarah, I love you. But this weekend, my answer is no. I already lived the years of sleepless nights and constant sacrifice. I raised my children. My time belongs to me now, and saying no doesn't make me a bad father. It means I need to take care of myself too." It wasn't easy. My stomach was in knots after I hung up the phone. But that one word, no, gave me something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Your children will always have problems to solve. That doesn't mean every one of them has to become yours. You have earned your retirement, your health, and your time. Never let guilt convince you that protecting them makes you selfish. The fourth thing you must never surrender is your space. Don't let your adult children treat your home like a place of convenience instead of your sanctuary. After my wife passed away, I sold the old family house and moved into a quiet 2-bedroom townhouse. For the first time in decades, I wasn't mowing a huge yard or fixing something every weekend. I set up a small workbench in the garage where I restored old mechanical clocks. It was peaceful. For the first time in years, I finally had a home that felt like a place to rest. Then, little by little, it stopped feeling like mine. Michael started bringing his family over for entire weekends without asking. My refrigerator became everyone's pantry, and my quiet living room became a noisy playground. Then Terrence asked if he could leave a few boxes in my spare bedroom for a couple of weeks. Those weeks turned into 4 years. The room filled with old furniture, gym equipment, and broken electronics until I couldn't even use the space I was paying for. I would come home, unlock my own front door, and feel like a visitor in my own house. One evening, after everyone finally left, I stood alone in my kitchen looking at the mess. That's when it hit me. I wasn't protecting my home anymore. I was giving it away. The next day, I sent all 3 of my children a message. I love you all, but this house is my sanctuary. Terrence, you have 2 weeks to move your belongings out, and from now on, nobody comes over without calling first. If you arrive unannounced, I won't answer the door. Michael laughed and told me I was getting cranky in my old age. I simply replied, maybe, but my door stays locked. 2 weeks later, Terrence arrived with a moving truck. After the last box was gone, he looked around the clean spare bedroom and smiled. You know, Dad, your place really does look nice. I smiled back because I'd finally taken my home back. Remember this, your home is more than 4 walls. It's where you rest, think, heal, and spend the years you've worked your whole life to earn. It isn't a storage unit, a free hotel, or an open invitation. Protect your peace by protecting your space. The 5th thing, the one that hurts more than anything else, is allowing a relationship where you're always expected to show up for your children, but they never show up for you. It takes me back to that empty chair beside my hospital bed. For 35 years, whenever one of my children called with a flat tire, a broken heart, or a crisis in the middle of the night, I got up and went. I never complained. I never kept score. I believed that's what a father was supposed to do. But when I was lying in that hospital bed after my stroke, with doctors running urgent tests and tubes taped to my arms, I didn't get visits. I got excuses. Michael had an important presentation at work. Terrence said traffic was terrible. Sarah said the kids had a soccer tournament. For 4 days, I stared at that empty chair and listened to the steady beep of the heart monitor. That's when I realized something painful. I had spent a lifetime convincing my children that I was unbreakable, that I would always be there, that I never needed anyone to be there for me. When I was discharged, I didn't go home angry. Anger would have changed nothing. Instead, I invited all 3 of my children to my townhouse. I looked each of them in the eye and said, I love you more than my own life, but I'm done being a bottomless well for people who won't bring me a single cup of water when I'm thirsty. If we're going to have a relationship from now on, it has to go both ways. I'm getting older. I get tired. I get sick. If you can't find the time to sit beside my hospital bed when I need you, don't expect me to always drop everything whenever your life falls apart. My voice shook, but I didn't back down. For the first time in years, they stopped seeing me as the man who would always rescue them. They saw me as a father who could also be hurt. Remember this, a healthy family gives and receives. If all the love, sacrifice, and effort flow in only one direction, that's not a relationship. It's an extraction. It was the hardest conversation I had ever had in my 79 years. My voice shook, my hands trembled, and my chest felt tight. But when I finished, the world didn't end. My children didn't walk away. For the first time in years, they truly saw me, not as the man who would always rescue them, not as a bank account with gray hair, but as their father, a man who could get tired, get sick, and need love too. Our relationship is stronger today because I finally stopped giving everything I had. No relationship can survive when one person keeps sacrificing while the other never notices. So if you're listening to me, don't wait for a hospital bed to wake you up. Don't wait until your savings are gone or your home no longer feels like your own. You've earned the right to your peace, your health, your home, your money, and your dignity. Setting boundaries isn't a betrayal of your children. It's an act of self-respect. Reclaim your life before there's nothing left of it to reclaim.